everybody, you're watching Apex Insider, the video series bringing you insights and opinions from thought leaders in the aviation industry. Today we're going to be talking about how airlines can stay relevant in the challenging future of digital distribution. Apex Insider is made possible by the support of Global Eagle. Connect, entertain, empower with innovation from Global Eagle. Our guest today is none other than Bobby Healy, founding Chief Technology Officer and now Non-Executive Director at CarTrawler. Welcome, Bobby.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you for joining us. Now, Bobby, for the benefit of those who don't know already, can you tell us a little bit about CarTrawler and what you provide to the airline industry?
Sure, yeah. Well, CarTrawler is a technology company. We've been in business about 14 years, and we've been working with airlines, over 100 airlines over the last 10 years to enable and merchandise every possible ancillary, non-air ancillary revenue product for their customers. So we would power a large airline, we would take over that part of their website, their mobile experience, and essentially look at the passenger flow, look at the information and merchandise and offer the customers the most relevant products around their journey, be it car hire, be it bus transfer, coach, rail, whatever it is, whatever is the perfect product to end or help them with their journey.
How do you get the most relevant product to the right passenger? There's obviously an element of personalization in there.
Yeah, no, huge, and it's all real time. So we would have on any one implementation, we'll be seeing the customer behavior as they purchase their flight. We would see, mostly all of the signals that they do. So if they have a child in the P&R, if they ask for a baby seat, there's a lot of signals in there that tell us what is the most appropriate, not perfect, but very high propensity that if a customer has a bunch of children with them, they're going to need a bigger car, right, for car hire. But you'd be amazed if you look at a lot of airline websites that no matter what you say when you're booking your flight, you're still offered a small car. It's just completely irrelevant. And similarly, if someone buys a price-sensitive ticket, you don't want to sell them a luxury brand, of a car, but yet that still happens. So it really is about, we use a lot of machine learning. I don't call it AI, but a lot of machine learning, and we have an enormous amount of data that feeds into essentially what's usually the best answer. It's hard, but it's where airlines have rightfully outsourced that particular role to a company like CarTrawler.
Okay, and what are some current trends that you guys are observing around how people are getting to and from the airport?
Yeah, so the way people usually plan their trips is they book their flight first, 40, 70 days in advance, then they'll, book a hotel, and then they'll finally at the last minute, usually within definitely less than 7 days, and for taxis or bus or rail, they don't even plan, they plan the day before. As they're checking in, they say, oh yeah, I need to figure out how am I getting from the airport to the hotel. And that tends to be a pretty big mistake, both in terms of the price that they pay, but also the experience that they receive, because if you're going on a ski trip, there's really, really good options to get you from the airport, the 2 hours to your ski resort that people aren't aware of. So they don't plan around that. So therefore it tends to be a chaotic purchasing experience, and they tend to either not get the right value for their money or they get the wrong product for their needs. So what's evolving now is companies that provide transportation, last mile and first mile transportation, are starting to digitalize their offerings. So they're providing ways for companies, technology companies like us, to get into their product. And that then in turn enables us to provide the airline with a good merchandising platform that lets them, basically say, what ways can I get from, point A to point B, what modes are there, and what's most appropriate for that particular, set of customers. So that's new, or it's been evolving over the last few years, and it's a really interesting space, because what we're seeing is people that maybe would have booked a car hire before in, say, south of Spain, actually, it'd be far better for them just to get a couple of transfers and then use on-demand taxis in the destination. So we've added all those products, and we start to see slight change in behavior in consumers simply because we're presenting them a better set of options.
Okay, and aside from consumer behavior, like from a technology perspective, or the way that transportation is evolving, what do you see changing in the next few years of how people get to and from the airport, and how can airlines sort of, take a bite out of this market or make sure that they're not left out?
Yeah, well, they certainly should be in the market. In fact, they have the best position to be, selling these products to consumers because of just the timeline of trip planning. So it is evolving, in their favor. So, there are, most rail companies, most bus companies are looking for distribution, and, they're highly fragmented industries, and so the airline is an opportunity, being at the top of the funnel, to consolidate that view and aggregate all these products and offer them to their customer base. They're enormous customer bases, so that's all good, and that's going in the right direction, and certainly that's the direction that we're pushing in, and all of our airline partners are very receptive and very encouraged by the early results. Longer term, some really exciting new modes of transport, for example, autonomous drones, autonomous passenger drones. So you have, very low cost, operationally very low cost tech. You have a very, very smooth customer experience, like similar to a helicopter, just safer, quieter, better for the environment. And you have a mode of transport there that can transport people from, anywhere from 5 to 150 kilometers really, really quickly, like 150, 250 miles an hour. And that's going to compete with essentially the current chaotic ways of doing that. So you could see a scenario where somebody flies into, Heathrow Airport, and rather spending 2 hours in a taxi or a shuttle, they could spend 15 minutes in an autonomous drone going to downtown London. So those new modes of transport that are and will be evolving are just, further better ways for certain use cases for a customer to get to the final destination they're traveling to. And that's a space that we're really interested in. We're interested in distributing that product and somehow getting it into the customer booking journey. And I think that, airlines are in the best possible place to be selling that.
So do you think they should be selling these products for other people, or should they be developing it on their own? Should they be looking to make that part of their operation, actually?
I think it's going to be hard to operationalize these products because they're R&D intensive. They require a lot of capital. They're different risk profiles. So there's, capital market support, crazy companies like Volocopter, or even what Uber Elevate are doing with their drone. I think that should play out, and that's an area that airlines don't belong in today. But where they do belong is participating, be it a joint venture or be it just in the strategic partnerships where, look, the airline brings 10, 20, 50 million passengers, otherwise known as customers, to these products. And so their role is, customers go to an airline first to say, I need to go to, whatever street or hotel in Mexico, somewhere outside of Mexico City. And the customer goes to the airline first for that. So the airline brings that customer base, brings a huge amount of distribution and knowledge of that customer's needs. And simply they should keep that, and they should make sure that they're ultimately the shop where that product is sold. And so I think the role that the airline needs to do there is firmly insert themselves into the future of these new modes of transport as a logical extension of how the customer travels.
Okay, so that sounds like a great opportunity for airlines if they sort of get started now. Based on some of the tech that you're watching, do you see any big threats to airline profitability or the brand recognition, brand perception?
Yeah, definitely. There's some threats that are growing quite a lot. If you look back the last 40, 50 years, the airlines have always complained or suffered from GDS distribution costs or indirect distribution cost. It used to be travel agency commission, then it became GDS costs. And there's always this cost of distribution that hurt airlines, but it was a cost simply to the bottom line. It was never brand dilution. Brand was always present, and there was always a way to differentiate. And so airlines could invest in quality initiatives or process initiatives that would differentiate themselves, and everything was good, right? Other than the cost. The new modes coming out now with internet distribution of very, very smart technology aggregators or intermediaries that get between the airline and the customer by essentially completely taking over the top of the experience funnel, the experience, the discovery, all the important consumer thinking moments in their lives are now being taken away from the airline. And that is a threat. And the reason that's a threat is that once you change consumer behavior and consumers adopt new technology, new modes of technology to both consume and understand the experience, you become, essentially a compressed aluminium tube full of kerosene, and that's what you do, right? The airlines are losing the ability to influence the experience. And I won't name names, but there's some very large technology companies that have it in their long-term strategic goals to totally take away the booking and purchase experience from airlines. And they are cognizant of it, but they need to find ways to, beat that.
Okay, and just very quickly, what's 1 or 2 ways to beat that?
Invest in your technology. Simply, the most simple, obvious miss that airlines are doing now is they're under-investing in mobile technology, and they need to change or adopt a new culture within their airlines to foster innovation on that mobile side. So if you think about, really good tech propeller heads, who do they want to work for? Do they want to work for an airline that don't even call it technology, they call it IT. So they need to, from the top down, from the CEO down, they need to learn the culture of technology innovation. They need to adapt that, foster it, and just get really good startup-y type teams to innovate. That's what they need to do. It's not a huge, it's as much cultural innovation as it is just financial innovation and just investing.
All right, well, thank you so much for joining us today, Bobby. Unfortunately, that's all the time we've got for this episode. If anybody watching wants to get in touch with you or learn more about what you're up to, where can they find you?
Look me up, Bobby Healy. Get me on LinkedIn, real Bobby Healy on Twitter. Happy to talk to anyone who wants to discuss strategy, certainly.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you guys all for watching this episode of Apex Insider. You can visit www.apex.aero to learn more about the Airline Passenger Experience Association. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more great aviation interviews.